rumor that shook ESPN? What if one of ESPN's most controversial NBA voices was suddenly gone overnight? And what if the person who seemed least surprised was the biggest star in sports media? That's the question that exploded across social media when rumors began spreading that Kendrick Perkins had been pushed out of ESPN. Within hours, NBA fans were posting reactions, debating his future, and wondering whether one of the network's loudest personalities had finally reached the end of the road. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The rumors didn't just put Perkins under the spotlight. They dragged Stephen A. Smith right into the center of the storm. For years, NBA fans have watched the fascinating dynamic between Stephen A. and Perkins. Sometimes they sound like colleagues, sometimes they sound like rivals, sometimes they sound like two competitors fighting for control of the same conversation. And when this latest rumor surfaced, fans immediately began connecting the dots. Was this simply another false internet story? Or was it exposing tensions that had been building behind the scenes for years? To understand why this rumor spread so quickly, you first have to understand Kendrick Perkins himself. Perkins has never been the type of analyst who plays it safe. Ever since joining ESPN, he has built a reputation for delivering bold opinions, regardless of how unpopular they might be. Whether discussing championship contenders, MVP races, superstar rankings, or controversial player narratives, Perkins has never been afraid to stand alone. That approach earned him attention. It also earned him criticism. A lot of criticism. Many NBA fans view Perkins as one of the most polarizing voices in basketball media. Every major opinion seems to generate headlines. Every debate creates new arguments. Every appearance sparks reactions from fans, analysts, and sometimes even current players. In today's media world, that's either a blessing or a curse. Sometimes it's both. But while fans were busy discussing Perkins, another question quietly began gaining momentum online. What did Stephen A. Smith really think? Because longtime viewers know something that casual fans often miss. Stephen A. has spent years publicly challenging, teasing, and occasionally roasting Perkins on national television. Sometimes it felt harmless, sometimes it felt personal. And sometimes it left viewers wondering whether there was more happening beneath the surface than anyone was willing to admit. The timing of this rumor only intensified those questions. Suddenly, old clips started resurfacing. Old debates were being replayed. Old disagreements were being analyzed. And before long, what started as a rumor about Kendrick Perkins was transforming into something much bigger. A story about power, a story about influence, and a story about two of ESPN's biggest NBA personalities whose relationship may be far more complicated than fans realize. Because the deeper we dig into this situation, the more surprising the truth becomes. And trust me, some of what happened behind the scenes left NBA fans completely stunned. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from today. If you think this rumor was completely fake, comment one below. If you believe there may be more to the story than ESPN wants fans to know, comment 2 below. And if you're enjoying this breakdown of the biggest NBA stories and drama, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Why fans wanted to believe it. The shocking part was not that the rumor spread. The shocking part was how many NBA fans wanted it to be true. The moment Kendrick Perkins' name started trending, the internet reacted like it had been waiting for this exact headline. Some fans laughed, some celebrated, others defended him immediately, but almost nobody ignored it. That is the power of Kendrick Perkins. He is not just another analyst sitting behind a desk. He is a walking debate machine. Every time he speaks, the basketball world splits into two sides. One side says he is fearless. The other side says he goes too far, and that divide is exactly why the rumor caught fire. For years, Perkins has delivered takes that made fans stop scrolling. He has questioned superstars. He has challenged legends. He has defended unpopular opinions with total confidence, even when the rest of the room looks stunned. To some viewers, that makes him authentic. To others, it makes him exhausting. And in modern sports media, exhaustion can be just as powerful as admiration. People still watch, they still comment, they still repost, they still argue. That is what ESPN understands better than anyone. Perkins creates reaction, reaction creates clips, clips create traffic, traffic creates value. So when a fake report claimed he was leaving ESPN, fans did not just see a rumor. They saw a possible turning point in the kind of NBA coverage they had been arguing about for years. But the story became bigger because of Stephen A. Smith. Because when Stephen A. is involved, nothing stays small. Fans remembered every time he challenged Perkins on air, every joke, every uncomfortable pause, every moment where Stephen A. looked at Perkins like he could not believe what he had just heard. And suddenly, the rumor felt less random. It felt like the latest chapter in a much deeper story. A story about a network built on debate. A story about two strong personalities sharing the same stage. and a story about whether Kendrick Perkins was becoming too controversial, even for a company that profits from controversy. But the truth was not that simple. Because Perkins may be criticized, mocked, and questioned, but he is also valuable. And the next part of this story shows exactly why Stephen A. Smith's public shots at him hit so hard. Stephen A. Smith's hidden shots. Stephen A. Smith knows how to turn one sentence into a headline. That is what makes him dangerous on television. He does not need to shout for 5 minutes to make a point. Sometimes all he needs is one look, one pause, one carefully timed joke, and the entire internet understands exactly what he means. That is what happened with Kendrick Perkins. For years, Stephen A. has taken little public shots at him, sometimes about basketball, sometimes about his delivery, sometimes even about what he wears on television. On the surface, a comment about a tie sounds harmless. But with Stephen A., nothing is ever just about a tie. It is about standards. It is about control. It is about reminding everyone who sets the tone on First Take. Stephen A. has built his image on being polished, loud, prepared, and impossible to ignore. When he sits on that set, he looks like a man who knows the show runs through him. So when Perkins shows up with a different style, a different rhythm, and a different energy, Stephen A. does not just see a colleague. He sees contrast, and contrast creates content. That is why fans started reading deeper into their exchanges. When Stephen A. praised Perkins, it often came with a sting. When he criticized Perkins, it often came with a smile. That combination is what made the dynamic so fascinating. It never felt like pure hatred. It felt more complicated than that, like respect wrapped in irritation, like friendship wrapped in competition, and that is exactly what keeps viewers watching. Because nobody tunes in just to see people agree. They tune in for tension. They tune in for the moment when one analyst says something so bold that the other person has no choice but to respond. Stephen A. understands that better than any. And Kendrick Perkins gives him the perfect target. Not because Perkins is weak, because Perkins does not back down. Perkins absorbs criticism like contact in the paint. He takes the hit, keeps his balance, and comes right back with another opinion. That is why their clashes feel different. Stephen A. can roast most people and end the conversation. But with Perkins, the conversation keeps going. And that is where the real drama lives. Because every time Stephen A. fires a shot, fans ask the same question. Is this just television? Or is Stephen A. sending a message about Kendrick Perkins' place at ESPN? From colleagues to rivals. On TV, the relationship between Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins is not easy to define. They are not enemies. They are not exactly allies. They are something much more valuable to ESPN. They are tension. Stephen A. is the face of the network, the veteran, the power voice, the man who can walk into any sports debate and instantly make it feel bigger. Perkins is different. He brings the perspective of a former player, a champion, someone who has actually been inside NBA locker rooms and playoff battles. He speaks with the confidence of a man who believes experience gives him authority. That difference creates natural conflict. Stephen A. speaks like a broadcaster who mastered the art of the debate. Perkins speaks like a former player who does not care if the room disagrees. And when those two styles collide, the screen lights up. That is why their relationship works so well on television, even when it looks uncomfortable. Stephen A. needs someone who will push back. Perkins needs someone big enough to challenge him in front of a national audience. Together, they create the exact kind of sports media moment that gets clipped, shared, debated, and replayed. But there is a cost, because when every disagreement becomes content, the line between performance and real tension starts to blur. Fans can feel that. They watch Stephen A. challenge Perkins and wonder if he is simply playing his role or if he truly believes Perkins is damaging the conversation. They watch Perkins sit there, calm and unmoved, and wonder if he is brushing it off or quietly storing every insult. That uncertainty is what makes the story addictive. If Stephen A. openly hated Perkins, the drama would be simple. If they were clearly close friends, the drama would be hard. But because it sits somewhere in the middle, every interaction feels loaded. A joke can sound like a warning. A compliment can sound like a setup. A disagreement can feel like a power move. And when the firing rumor appeared, all of that history came rushing back. Suddenly, fans were not just asking whether Perkins was still at ESPN. They were asking whether Stephen A. had been telling us something all along. The controversies that follow Perkins, Kendrick Perkins does not walk around controversy. He walks straight through it. That has been his identity from the moment he became a major NBA voice on television. He is not the analyst who gives soft answers. He does not hide behind safe opinions. He says what he thinks, even when the entire basketball world is ready to attack him for it. And that is why his name constantly finds the storm. One week, it is a superstar ranking. Another week, it is a comment about a young player. Then it is a debate about legends, contracts, leadership, effort, or whether a team has what it takes to win a championship. Perkins rarely gives the audience a neutral opinion, he gives them a position, a strong one. The kind that forces people to respond. That is exactly why ESPN keeps putting him on television. Love him or hate him, people react to him. And in the current media business, reaction is gold. But the same thing that makes him valuable also makes him vulnerable, because every controversial take leaves a mark. Fans remember, players remember, other analysts remember. And when a rumor appears saying Perkins may be gone, all those old moments come back at once. That is what happened here. People brought up his most debated NBA rankings. They brought up moments where players pushed back. They brought up his clashes with major basketball figures. They brought up the idea that Perkins had become more famous for reaction than analysis. And that is when the conversation became dangerous. Because once fans start seeing an analyst as the controversy instead of the person covering the controversy, everything changes. Perkins was no longer just commenting on the NBA. He had become part of the NBA drama machine. That is a difficult position to survive. But Perkins has survived it because he never appears shaken. He does not come back the next day apologizing for being too strong. He does not soften his voice. He does not suddenly change into a quiet, cautious analyst. He stays Kendrick Perkins, and that stubborn confidence is exactly what frustrates his critics and impresses his supporters. Still, the tension kept building, and one moment involving the Boston Celtics made fans look at Perkins' relationship with the basketball world in a completely different way. The Celtics moment nobody forgot. For Kendrick Perkins, the Boston Celtics are not just another NBA team. They are part of his legacy. He won a championship there. He battled in that uniform. He shared the floor with legends and became part of one of the most memorable Celtics eras of the modern NBA. That is why the Celtics-related tension hit so hard. When reports circulated that Perkins was not warmly included in the Celtics celebration conversation after their recent championship run, fans immediately understood the symbolism. This was not just any former player. This was a former Celtic champion. And yet, his role as a television analyst had created enough friction that even his old basketball family became part of the conversation. That is the price of being brutally honest on national television. When you criticize teams from a distance, players hear it, families hear it, front offices hear it, fan bases hear it. And when those comments pile up over time, they can change how people see you. Perkins built his ESPN identity on saying what others might avoid. But when the target is a team that once helped define your career, the reaction becomes more personal. That is why this part of the story mattered. It shows that Perkins' controversy was not limited to Twitter arguments or YouTube comments. It had reached the actual basketball community, and that made Stephen A. Smith's criticism feel even heavier. Because Stephen A. was not roasting someone who had no history in the game. He was challenging a former champion whose credibility came from having lived the NBA life. That creates a complicated clash. Stephen A. has power through media. Perkins has power through experience. Stephen A. controls the conversation. Perkins claims authority from the locker room, and when those two forms of power collide, the result is explosive. The Celtics situation also raised a bigger question. Can a former player become so outspoken as an analyst that the basketball world starts distancing itself from him? That is the uncomfortable question hanging over Perkins, because his greatest strength is also his greatest risk. He speaks without fear, but sometimes when you speak without fear, people remember every word. And Stephen A. Smith understands that better than anyone, which is why his own position inside ESPN becomes the next key to this entire drama. The ESPN power structure. To understand why Stephen A. Smith's words hit differently, you have to understand his position at ESPN. Stephen A. is not just another analyst. He is the franchise. He is the voice people expect to hear when a major sports story breaks. He is the face ESPN trusts to drive debate, create headlines, and keep the conversation moving. That kind of position changes everything. When an ordinary analyst criticizes Kendrick Perkins, it becomes a clip. When Stephen A. does it, it becomes a message. That is why fans dissect every word. Stephen A. has earned a level of security that very few people in sports media ever reach. He can speak with confidence because everyone knows he is not fighting for a seat at the table. He owns the table. That power makes his relationship with Perkins even more interesting because Perkins may be valuable, but Stephen A. is central. Perkins may create debate, but Stephen A. controls the room. Perkins may be loud, but Stephen A. is louder in the way that matters most. Influence. So when Stephen A. challenges Perkins, it is not just two analysts arguing. It feels like the biggest star at ESPN testing whether another major voice meets the standard. That is why the fashion jokes matter. That is why the on-air disagreements matter. That is why even small comments became viral moments. Stephen A. has positioned himself as the guardian of the First Take brand. The energy, the tone, the seriousness, the theatrics, the professional image, all of it runs through it. And Perkins, with his blunt style and unpredictable takes, represent something Stephen A can use, but also something he may need to contain. That is the hidden tension. Perkins is great for television because he creates conflict, but Stephen A is great for television because he knows how to direct conflict. One is raw force, the other is controlled fire, and ESPN benefits from both. That is why the firing rumor became so fascinating. It forced fans to ask whether Perkins was truly secure or whether his value depended on how much chaos ESPN was willing to tolerate. But while fans were asking that question, the internet was already doing what it always does. It turned the entire situation into a war. The internet turns it into a war. The internet does not need the full truth to start a battle. It only needs a spark. And the Kendrick Perkins rumor was the perfect spark. Within hours, fans on X, Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok were treating the story like it was confirmed. Clips of Perkins went viral. Old Stephen A moments resurfaced. Fans started comparing ESPN analysts, debating who deserved the platform, and arguing about whether Perkins represented everything wrong with modern sports media. Some people defended him. They said Perkins is honest, fearless, and entertaining. Others attacked his style, saying he was too provocative and too often rewarded for takes that made fans angry. But no matter which side people were on, they were all doing the same thing. They were talking about him. That is the paradox of Kendrick Perkins. His critics help make him more relevant. Every angry post becomes engagement. Every reaction video becomes promotion. Every heated debate proves that people still care enough to respond. And that is why ESPN's model worked. The audience may complain about loud debate shows, but they keep watching the clips. They keep arguing in the comments. They keep turning personalities into storylines. Stephen A. Smith understands this perfectly. He has built an empire inside that exact system. He knows that in sports media, attention is not always about being loved. Sometimes it is about being unavoidable. Perkins has become unavoidable, and the internet made sure this rumor reached another level. Suddenly, the story was not just, did Perkins leave ESPN? It became, is Stephen A. taking shots at Perkins? Then it became, does ESPN value drama over analysis? Then it became, is this what NBA coverage has become? That is how one false rumor turns into a full cultural debate. Because the rumor gave fans permission to say what they had already been thinking. Some fans were tired of hot takes. Some fans missed deeper basketball breakdown. Some fans believed Perkins was simply playing the media game better than everyone else. And some fans just wanted to watch Stephen A. and Perkins collide again. That is the uncomfortable truth. People say they hate the drama, but the drama is what keeps them watching. And once the internet turned this into a war, the final question became unavoidable. Was the rumor ever real? Or was the truth even more revealing than the lie? The truth behind the exit rumor. In the end, the rumor that started everything was not what it appeared to be. Kendrick Perkins had not been officially removed from ESPN. The viral claim came from misleading online chatter, boosted by fans who either did not check the source or simply wanted the story to be true. That matters, because in today's sports media world, a false report can still create a real reaction. The rumor may not have been true, but the emotions behind it were. The frustration was real. The debate was real. The criticism of Perkins was real. And the curiosity about Stephen A. Smith's role in the whole situation was absolutely real. That is why the story did not disappear once people realized the original claim was weak. By then, it had already exposed something deeper. It exposed how divided NBA fans are about ESPN's basketball coverage. It exposed how polarizing Perkins has become. It exposed how much power Stephen A. Smith has over the conversation. And it exposed how quickly the internet can turn uncertainty into entertainment. Perkins continued appearing on ESPN, which should have ended the speculation, but it did not end the conversation, because the conversation was never really about whether he still had a job. It was about whether fans believe he should have that job. That is a much bigger question, and it is one ESPN has likely already answered. Networks do not reward silence. They reward impact. Perkins has impact. Every time he makes a bold statement, fans react. Every time players push back, his name trends. Every time Stephen A. challenges him, clips spread across the internet. That kind of attention is valuable. So even when critics call for change, ESPN sees something else. They see a personality who keeps the machine moving. Stephen A. Smith sees it too. That is why his roasting of Perkins is so layered. It is not just mockery. It is not just personal tension. It is part of a system where both men benefit from conflict. Stephen A. looks like the powerful standard setter. Perkins looks like the fearless former player who refuses to be moved. ESPN gets the ratings, the clips, the debates, and the social media firestorm. So maybe the truth is not that the rumor failed. Maybe the truth is that the rumor worked perfect. It reminded everyone that Kendrick Perkins remains one of the most talked about voices in basketball media. And it set the stage for the real conclusion. Who actually won this drama? The real winner of the drama. The real winner was not Stephen A. Smith. it was not Kendrick Perkins. It was not even the fans who spent days arguing online. The real winner was the machine, the modern sports media machine, because this entire drama proved exactly how NBA coverage works now. A rumor appears, fans react, clips resurface, personalities become storylines, debate shows turn the controversy into content. YouTube channels break it down. Social media pushes it even further. And before long, the original question barely matters anymore. Was Kendrick Perkins actually leaving ESPN? No. But did the rumor create massive attention? Absolutely. That is the lesson. In today's media world, perception can move almost as fast as truth. And sometimes, it travels even farther. Stephen A. Smith understands that better than anyone. He knows how to turn disagreement into must-watch television. He knows how to criticize someone while still keeping the relationship alive. He knows how to make a roast feel personal enough to trend, but controlled enough to keep the show moving. Kendrick Perkins understands the game too. He may not play it with the same polish, but he plays it with conviction. He shows up, says what he believes, takes the backlash, and comes back the next day unchained. That is why this dynamic continues. Stephen A. needs strong personalities around him. Perkins needs big stages to challenge. ESPN needs people who can keep NBA fans talking even when there is no game being played. So the drama is not a breakdown of the system. It is the system working exactly as designed. But there is also a human lesson here. Behind the clips, the jokes, the criticism, and the viral moments are real people trying to survive in a business built on pressure. Strong opinions can create opportunity, but they can also create distance. Public criticism can entertain millions, but it can also affect relationships behind the scenes. The best path forward is balance. Debate the takes, challenge the arguments, enjoy the drop. But remember that basketball is still supposed to bring people together, not turn every disagreement into a personal war. Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins may continue clashing on television, and fans will probably keep watching every second of it. But the healthiest version of sports media is one where passion does not erase respect, because at the end of the day, the game is bigger than any analyst. The NBA is bigger than any rumor, and the conversation is always better when heat comes with humanity. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Stephen A. Smith was just joking with Kendrick Perkins? Or do you believe there is real tension behind the scenes? Comment 1 if you think it is all part of the show. Comment 2 if you think the drama is real. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with another NBA fan, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next big story.